The galaxy had known many empires, but none were as proud and strong as the Zarathi Empire. Their starships flew like blades of silver, sharp and cold. Their warriors were tall and fierce, with armor that gleamed under alien suns. To them, honor was everything, and to serve their queen Saranya was the greatest glory a Zarathi could dream of. But not everyone in the galaxy was Zarathi. Humans, a younger race, had only begun to walk among the stars in the last century. To most alien empires, humans were still strangers too small, too weak, and too new to be respected. Yet humanity carried something that no empire could easily measure: stubborn courage. It was this courage that had brought Commander Adrian Holt into the heart of the Zarathi Palace. Adrian was not the tallest man in the room. He was not the strongest either, not compared to the towering Zarathi guards who looked down at him with glowing golden eyes. But he stood straight, his black uniform clean, his boots polished, his face calm and steady. He was chosen by the United Earth Council to serve as bodyguard during the great peace talks. To some, this was an honor. To Adrian, it was simply duty. "Keep your mind sharp, Holt," his superior had told him before departure. "The Zarathi are proud. Do not insult them. Do not show fear. And most of all, protect the princess at all costs. If she comes to harm under our guard, peace may end before it even begins." Adrian understood. He always understood. His life had been one of orders and discipline. He was a soldier, trained to defend, trained to endure. Yet, even as the shuttle carried him to the palace of the Zarathi queen, he wondered what fate awaited him. He had never seen the princess he was meant to guard. He had only heard whispers of her beauty, her wit, and her importance to the empire. The palace itself was a wonder. Built on the homeworld Zarath Prime, it rose from the ground like crystal mountains. Towers shone in violet light, and silver bridges curved between them like ribbons in the sky. The walls hummed faintly, alive with energy drawn from the planet's core. It was a place made to impress, to remind visitors of the Empire's greatness. Adrian walked through its halls with careful steps. Beside him, 2 Zarathi guards moved in silence, their armor clinking with each step. The air smelled faintly of burning incense, sharp and metallic. The walls were lined with carvings of past queens and warriors, their victories immortalized in stone. Finally, the doors opened, and Adrian was led into the royal court. There she sat, Queen Saranya, tall and regal upon her throne. Her eyes were like polished amber, bright and sharp. She wore robes of deep indigo, trimmed with silver, and her crown glimmered like starlight. She did not look at Adrian as a guest. She looked at him as if she could measure his worth in a single breath, and beside her stood Princess Lyra. Adrian's eyes rested on her for the first time, and he understood why so many spoke of her. She was younger than the queen, her features softer, her hair dark as night. Her eyes, however, carried the same glow as her mother's, though warmer, curious, almost kind. She wore a gown of silver fabric that shimmered when she moved, and though she stood quietly, Adrian sensed a restless energy within her. "This is the human." The queen's voice echoed across the hall. It was low, commanding, yet smooth like stone worn by a river. "This is the one chosen to guard my daughter?" Adrian bowed slightly. "Commander Adrian Holt of Earth, Your Majesty. I serve at your request." The queen studied him in silence. Her gaze was sharp enough to make even the Zarathi guards uneasy. But Adrian did not lower his eyes. He had learned long ago that sometimes strength was not in the size of your body, but in the way you stood. At last, Queen Saranya gave a nod. "Very well. You will guard the princess. Fail, and it will not only be your life that Nzida will be the bond between our peoples." "I will not fail," Adrian replied simply. From that day, Adrian's life in the palace began. He followed Princess Lyra everywhere she went through the crystal gardens, across the libraries that stretched like galaxies of knowledge. And even during her lessons in diplomacy and combat, at first the princess said little to him. She seemed unsure of this human assigned to her side. The Zarathi guards often sneered, whispering to each other that it was foolish to trust a smaller. weaker species with such an important duty. Adrian heard their words but paid them no mind. Words could not pierce armor, and his armor was his discipline. Days turned to weeks. Slowly, the princess began to speak. "You do not look like our warriors," Lyra said. One evening as they walked the balcony that overlooked the glowing city, "You are smaller. Your skin is pale. Yet you stand as if nothing can harm you. Why is that?" Adrian gave a small smile. "Because fear does not protect. Calm does." She tilted her head, curious. "And if fear makes you move faster, then calm makes you strike true," he answered. She laughed softly, a sound like silver bells. "Strange human logic." "Maybe," Adrian said, "but it keeps me alive." For the first time, her eyes softened toward him. It was not long after that the danger came. The palace seemed eternal, safe behind its shields and guards, but danger always found a way. The Zarathi Empire had many enemies. Some were rival empires jealous of their power. Others were factions within, hungry for the throne. And there were those who hated the very idea of peace with humans. It happened during a grand feast. The hall was filled with music and voices, banners of silver and violet waving from the ceiling. Queen Serenia sat upon her throne, her generals at her side. Princess Lyra moved among the guests, smiling with practiced grace. Adrian followed her steps closely, his eyes sharp, his mind alert. Then he saw it. A flicker of motion among the crowd. A hand too quick. A shadow too close to the princess. In a heartbeat, Adrian moved. The blade came down a thin, curved dagger of alien steel. But before it could touch the princess, Adrian's hand shot forward, seizing the attacker's wrist. With a twist, he forced the blade aside. Gasps filled the hall as the would-be assassin snarled, his face hidden beneath a hood. The princess froze. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then chaos erupted. The assassin tried to strike again. But Adrian's fist met his jaw, sending him crashing to the floor. Guards rushed forward, blades drawn, but Adrian already had the attacker pinned. His eyes burned with focus, his breath steady. "Are you hurt?" he asked quickly, turning his head toward the princess. Princess Lyra shook her head, her eyes wide with shock. "No, I am safe." The hall filled with shouts as the assassin was dragged away. Guests whispered in fear, some in anger. How had an enemy slipped past the guards? How had this human seen what others had missed? And above it all, Queen Serenia watched, her amber eyes fixed on Adrian, not with suspicion, but with something else. Something sharper, something curious. When the hall was cleared and calm returned, Adrian was summoned before the queen. He stood alone at the base of the throne, his uniform slightly torn, his hands still red from the fight. The court was silent, waiting for the queen's judgment. "You risked your life," Queen Serenia said slowly. "For my daughter. For someone not of your own blood?" "Why?" Adrian raised his chin. "Because it is my duty." "Duty," she repeated, as if tasting the word. "Many claim duty, but few act with such swiftness. Do you value her life above your own?" "Yes," Adrian said simply. Murmurs swept the hall. The Zarathi were a proud race. They valued strength and loyalty, but this human had shown a kind of loyalty they did not fully understand. To them, sacrifice was for glory. But this human had risked everything without promise of reward. The queen leaned back in her throne, her eyes never leaving him. For the first time, her voice softened, though only slightly. "Interesting," she murmured. "Very interesting." From that day forward, Adrian was no longer just a guard. He became a mystery to the palace, a subject of whispers and questions. The Zarathi guards watched him with wary eyes. Some envied him, some despised him, but none could deny his courage, and the queen. She began to watch him more closely, for reasons she did not yet admit even to herself. The assassination attempt had shaken the palace. For days afterward, the halls were filled with tension, and guards stood at every corner, their spears and blades gleaming like silent threats. The court whispered about betrayal, about hidden enemies, about the strange human who had seen danger where others had failed. And through it all, Commander Adrian Holt remained calm. He stayed at the princess's side, watchful, steady, like a mountain that would not move. He spoke little, but his presence carried weight. Many Zarathi still doubted him, yet none could deny the truth. The human had saved the princess's life. A question from the throne one evening. Adrian was summoned again to the royal court. The chamber glowed with violet light from tall crystal lamps. Queen Serania sat on her throne, regal and commanding as always, her amber eyes fixed on him. The generals and nobles stood to the sides, watching closely. Adrian bowed slightly. "Your Majesty." The queen's voice rang clear, each word sharp as steel. "I asked you before why you risked your life for my daughter. You said it was duty. I wish to understand more. Why does a human guard risk everything for someone who is not of his people?" Adrian looked up, his expression calm but firm. "Because protecting the innocent is the right thing to do. On Earth, we do not measure worth by blood or race. We measure it by life itself. A life is always worth defending." A murmur passed through the chamber. Too many Zarathi. This was strange logic. They fought for honor, for pride, for empire. They valued strength and loyalty, yes, but to protect someone without promise of reward, that was something different. The queen tilted her head, studying him. "So you would give your life even for an enemy?" Adrian's eyes did not waver. If the enemy was unarmed and helpless, yes. Silence followed his words. Some nobles scoffed. Others whispered. But the queen's gaze only grew sharper, and behind her steady eyes, something stirred curiosity, and perhaps a spark of respect. "Very well," she said at last. "You may continue your service, but know this, our empire does not forget. We will watch you." Adrian nodded once. "I expect nothing less." The princess speaks after the court dismissed him. Adrian returned to his duty beside Princess Lyra. She had been quiet since the attack. Her youthful smile dimmed by the shadow of fear. Yet when she looked at Adrian, there was a new light in her eyes. "You are different," she said softly as they walked through the crystal gardens that shimmered under two moons. "Other guards, even Zarathi ones, they follow me because they must. You follow me because you choose." "Why?" Adrian gave a small smile. "Because choice is what makes duty stronger. Orders can break, but choice lasts." Lyra thought about his words, then gave a faint smile of her own. "You speak in riddles, human. But your riddles make me feel safe." Adrian glanced at her. "That's all I want." For the first time since the attack, the princess laughed. A gentle sound that echoed among the crystal trees. Eyes of the Queen Serania did not often show emotion. She ruled with steady strength, her voice carrying command, her presence filling every hall she entered. Yet since the day of the feast, her eyes often drifted toward the human guard. She watched him from her throne during councils. She watched him in the training grounds, where he practiced with calm precision, his movements sharp, though not as powerful as Zarathi warriors. She watched him when he thought no one noticed, standing at the princess's side with patience and unwavering alertness. To Serania, this human was puzzling. Most warriors sought glory, reward, or recognition, but Adrian did not. He did not boast of saving the princess. He did not ask for titles. He simply returned to his post, silent and firm. One night, she called for him privately. He entered her chamber with steady steps, bowing slightly. "Your Majesty." The queen's eyes gleamed like molten gold under the dim light. "You intrigue me, human. You act without fear, yet you do not seek reward. Tell me what drives you. What gives you this strength?" Adrian paused, then answered simply. "Discipline and belief. On Earth, many of us are taught that courage is not about wanting glory. It is about standing when no one else will." The queen studied him for a long time. Then slowly, a faint smile touched her lips. A rare thing. Strange human ideas, but perhaps not without merit. For the first time, she dismissed him not as a servant, but as an equal. Jealous whispers not everyone in the palace approved. The Zarathi nobles began to whisper more loudly. "The queen speaks to him too often," one said. "He is not one of us," another sneered. "Humans are weak. How can such a creature earn the queen's gaze?" Even some guards muttered under their breath when Adrian walked past. Some called him lucky. Others called him dangerous, but Adrian ignored their words. His task was clear: protect the princess. And he would not let politics or jealousy distract him from his duty. Yet he could not ignore the truth. The queen was indeed watching him more closely. And though he did not seek her attention, he could feel the weight of her gaze like the pull of a star. The second threat tit was a week later when danger struck again. The princess was walking in the palace courtyard, the sky above painted with the glow of 3 suns. Adrian followed at her side, scanning the balconies and shadows. Suddenly, a sharp whistle cut the air. Adrian's instincts flared. In one swift motion, he pulled the princess behind him, just as a small, dart-like projectile struck his shoulder. The impact stung, but his armor absorbed most of it. He dropped low, his eyes scanning the rooftops. There, an attacker hidden behind the crystal archway. "Guards!" Adrian shouted, his voice steady even through pain. Zarathi guards rushed in, but Adrian was faster. He pulled a small sidearm from his belt, standard human issue, compact but effective. With precise aim, he fired not to kill, but to disarm. The attacker's weapon clattered to the ground, and the assassin fled before the guards caught him. Princess Lyra clutched Adrian's arm. "You are hurt." "It's nothing," he said, though blood stained his sleeve. His eyes remained locked on the rooftops. "The important thing is that you are safe." Within minutes, the queen herself arrived, her presence filling the courtyard. She saw the humans standing there, blood dripping, yet calm and unshaken. Her gaze burned. "Again, you protect her," she said. "And again, you bleed for her." Adrian straightened. "It is my duty." The queen's voice lowered, almost like a whisper. "Or perhaps it is more the queen's curiosity later, after the wound was treated." Adrian was summoned once more to the queen's private chambers. She dismissed the guards, keeping only him in the vast room lit by glowing crystals. For a long while she said nothing, simply watching him. At last she spoke. "You fight with less strength than my warriors, yet you move faster. You lack our height, yet you endure wounds with steady calm. Tell me, human, what makes you stand even when the odds are against you?" Adrian met her gaze, his voice quiet but firm. "Because someone must. If everyone waits for another to act, then nothing is defended. So I choose to stand first." The queen's lips curved, not quite into a smile, but something close. "Perhaps that is the strength of your kind." She leaned back, her amber eyes never leaving him. "I will watch you, Adrian Holt, for I suspect your story with this empire is only beginning." And in that moment, Adrian realized the truth. The queen of the Zarathi was not just curious. She was interested. And that interest could change everything. The palace of Zarath Prime was never truly quiet. Even in the deep hours of the night, its crystal walls hummed with energy, and the streets outside buzzed with the life of the empire. But inside Adrian Holt's heart, silence had begun to grow heavier than noise. He was a soldier, a man who lived by duty. Yet lately, he felt his duty colliding with something deeper, something he had never expected to face in this foreign empire. It began with the queen, the queens, watchful since the second attack on the princess. Queen Serenia had been watching Adrian more closely than before. At councils, her gaze often lingered on him, though she said nothing. During training sessions, she would pause to observe how he moved, his sharp eyes always searching, his calm never breaking. To her generals, Adrian was still an outsider. To her nobles, he was a curiosity. But to the queen, he was becoming something else entirely. One evening, as Adrian escorted Princess Lyra back from her lessons, the queen herself appeared in the corridor. She dismissed the other guards with a wave of her hand, leaving only Adrian, the princess, and herself. "Adrian Holt," the queen said, her voice low but steady. "Walk with me." Adrian glanced at the princess. Lyra gave him a small nod, her eyes curious but calm. He bowed slightly and followed the queen down the long crystal hall. The silence between them was heavy. Only the soft hum of the palace lights filled the air. Finally, Serenia spoke. "You are unlike any warrior I have known," she said. "My soldiers fight for glory. My generals fight for power. But you fight without asking anything in return. Why?" Adrian's steps were even, his voice steady. "Because that is what I was trained to do. To protect, to stand, even when no one else will." The queen's golden eyes glimmered. Strange, and yet, I find myself admiring it. Her words lingered in the air like a spark. One that Adrian felt deep within, though he tried not to show it. The princess and the guard, meanwhile. Princess Lyra had begun to change too. She spoke more freely with Adrian now, asking him questions about Earth, about human history, about the stars as seen from his homeworld. One evening, they sat in the palace gardens where crystal flowers glowed faintly in the moonlight. The princess leaned forward, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Tell me about your home," she said. "What does Earth look like?" Adrian thought for a moment. "It is smaller than Zareth Prime. The skies are blue. The oceans cover most of the surface. We have mountains that touch the clouds, and forests that stretch for miles. And the people. They are stubborn. They do not always agree, but when it matters, they stand together." Lyra smiled softly. "It sounds beautiful," Adrian said. Then, after a pause, he added, "But it is also fragile. That is why we defend it so fiercely." The princess's smile faded into thoughtfulness. "Maybe that is why you guard me so strongly, because you know the worth of what is fragile." Adrian said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Whispers of the court, but, while bonds grew quietly, the palace court grew restless. The nobles whispered more openly now. "The queen gives him too much attention," one muttered. "The human walks as if he belongs among us," said another. "This is dangerous. Dangerous for the throne, dangerous for the empire." Even some of the generals began to murmur. They respected strength, and though Adrian was strong in his own way, they saw the queen's interest as weakness. Rumors spread quickly through the palace. Whispers that the queen found the human interesting, perhaps even too interesting. And though no one dared speak it aloud in her presence, jealousy began to stir like a storm. The council debate, the tension grew sharp during a council meeting. Queen Serenia sat on her throne. Her generals and advisors gathered around her. Adrian stood at the edge of the chamber, silent as always, a shadow guarding the princess. One general stepped forward, his armor heavy with metals. "Your Majesty," he said boldly, "this human has earned respect, yes. But he is not one of us. He is not Zarathi. Why does he stand in our most sacred halls as if he belongs here?" The queen's eyes narrowed. "Because he has proven his worth." The general bowed stiffly, but his voice carried defiance. "He may have saved the princess twice, but what happens when loyalty is tested further? Can an outsider truly be trusted with the future of our empire?" The queen rose slowly, her presence filling the hall like thunder. "Loyalty is not measured by blood," she said. "It is measured by action. And by action, he has already proven himself more loyal than some who sit before me." The chamber fell silent. The general bowed again, though his pride was wounded. Adrian stood quietly, his face calm, though inside he knew the queen had just taken a risk for him, and that risk would not be forgotten. Private conversations later that night. The queen summoned Adrian to her private balcony. The stars stretched wide across the sky, and the city lights glowed beneath them. "You heard the council," she said without turning. "They doubt you. They doubt me for valuing you." Adrian stood behind her, hands clasped behind his back. "I expected no less. I am human. To them, I will always be different." The queen turned, her golden eyes sharp. "And does that trouble you?" Adrian shook his head. "No, difference does not weaken duty." For a long moment they stood in silence, the weight of unspoken words heavy in the air. Then Serenia spoke softly. "You remind me of something I thought I had forgotten, that strength is not only power, but choice. Perhaps that is why you stand out among my people. Adrian met her gaze, his voice quiet. And perhaps that is why you lead them. Because you see what others do not. Her lips curved faintly. Not a smile, not quite, but something close. The princess's trust while the queen studied him with growing interest. Princess Lyra's bond with Adrian grew warmer. She trusted him now, not only as a guard, but as a friend. One day, as they walked the training grounds, she asked him, "Do you ever miss your home?" Adrian paused. "Every day, but duty comes first. Would you go back if you could?" "Yes," Adrian said honestly. Then, after a moment, he added, "But not until my duty here is done." The princess smiled, though her eyes carried something deeper, perhaps worry, perhaps admiration. "Then I hope your duty lasts a long time." The queen's conflict for Queen Serenia. The days that followed were strange. She was a ruler, a warrior, a mother. She was not a woman who allowed herself distraction. And yet, she found her thoughts wandering toward the human more often than she wished. She told herself it was curiosity, nothing more. He was different. He was steady. He was honest in a way her nobles were not. That was all. And yet, when she saw him standing tall, despite whispers, when she saw the way he defended her daughter without hesitation, something stirred within her, a dangerous something. The spark of doubt, but danger was never far. One night, whispers reached her ears. A faction of generals was growing restless. They claimed the queen was being blinded by the human's presence. They claimed she was allowing weakness into the throne. Serenia dismissed the reports publicly. But privately, she could not ignore them. The empire was strong because it trusted its traditions. And now she was breaking them if only by watching a human too closely. Was she risking her throne for curiosity? Or was it more than curiosity now? She did not have the answer. The humans, Resolvrian, for his part, noticed the shifting glances, quiet whispers, the heavier weight of eyes upon him. But he never let it break his calm. His task was simple: protect the princess, no matter what, and so he stood. At councils, in gardens, in training halls, always steady, always watchful, and always. He felt the queen's eyes upon him. The turning point was during another feast. Weeks after the second attack, that the true shift began. The hall was filled with nobles and warriors, the air heavy with music and pride. Adrian stood at his post near the princess, silent and sharp. At the center of the hall, Queen Serenia rose to speak. Her voice carried strength as she spoke of peace, of unity, of vigilance. But when her eyes swept the hall, they stopped just for a moment in Adrian. And in that single pause, in that single glance, the truth became clear to many. The queen did not see the human only as a guard. She saw him as something more, and the court knew it. The palace of Zareth Prime was glowing with light that evening. From the highest towers, crystal lamps shone into the night, signaling to the city below that the empire remained strong. But inside the heart of the palace, shadows had already begun to gather. The calm before the storm. Adrian Holt walked the crystal corridors in silence. His steps were steady, his eyes sharp, his hand never far from the hilt of the sword the queen had gifted him. He had learned much about the palace in the weeks since his arrival. He knew its hidden passageways, its watchtowers, and even the weaknesses in its defenses. But what troubled him most was not the palace. Svet was the people inside it. The whispers of unrest had grown louder. Generals who once bowed with respect now glared at him openly. Nobles whispered behind silk fans when the queen spoke of unity. Some no longer bothered to hide their suspicion. Adrian was no stranger to distrust. He had faced it before, even among his own people back on Earth. But here, on an alien world, the weight of it was different. It was not only his life at stake. It was the queen's, the princess's, and perhaps even the stability of the entire empire. The queen's Anise Queen Serenia felt the unrest too. She was strong, unyielding, a ruler who had defended her people for years. But she could not ignore the growing divide within her court. One night, she summoned Adrian to her private council chamber. Only the two of them stood there, the stars visible through the wide glass walls behind her. The council grows restless, she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. Some fear I trust you too much. Others say I am blinded by you. Adrian bowed slightly. If my presence causes danger to your throne, I will leave. Serenia's golden eyes narrowed. No, that is exactly what they want. And if you leave, they will take it as weakness. I will not give them that. She stepped closer, her gaze locked on his. Tell me, Adrian Holt, if they move against me, will you stand with me? Adrian's voice was firm, without hesitation. Until my last breath. For a moment, the queen's mask of strength softened, and she allowed herself a rare truth. Then I am not alone. The princess's worry, meanwhile. Princess Lyra watched events with quiet eyes. She trusted Adrian more than anyone else. But she also knew that loyalty to him put her mother in danger. One evening in the palace gardens, she spoke softly to Adrian, while crystal flowers glowed around them. They are afraid of you, she said. Afraid of what you mean to my mother. To the throne. Adrian looked at her calmly. Fear often leads to anger, and anger leads to mistakes. The princess studied him carefully. But their mistake may cost you your life. Adrian gave a faint smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. I have lived with that risk since the day I became a soldier. Lyra fell silent, but in her heart, she prayed he would survive what was coming. The first strike, the coup, began quietly, as all betrayals do. It was during a night of celebration. The queen had gathered her council and nobles for a feast in the grand hall. Music played, crystal chandeliers sparkled, and golden banners hung high above the tables. Adrian stood at his usual post, near the princess. His eyes scanned the room, calm but sharp. And that was when he noticed at the guards. They were not the same men he had trained with earlier. Their armor bore the same crest, but their stances were different. Their eyes flickered too quickly, their grips on their weapons too tight. Adrian's instincts screamed a warning, and then, in a single heartbeat, the hall erupted into chaos. The coup unfolds. One of the generals rose suddenly, his goblet clattering to the ground. Enough of this weakness, he shouted. The throne belongs to strength, not to those blinded by outsiders. At his signal, the false guards drew their blades. Nobles screamed, scattering as steel clashed against crystal floors. Protect the queen, someone cried, but many of the palace guards hesitated. Some even turned against her. Adrian moved instantly. He pushed Princess Lyra behind him, drawing his blade in one smooth motion. A soldier lunged toward them, but Adrian's strike was faster, his sword cutting the weapon from the soldier's hand before the man collapsed. The queen herself rose, her golden staff in hand, its crystal core glowing with energy. Her voice thundered across the hall. Traitors, you dare raise your hand against the crown? The rebels did not falter. You have betrayed us already, shouted the leading general. You place your trust in an alien, and now you will fall by the hands of your own people. Adrian and the queen fight together. The battle was fierce. Blades clashed, energy staffs blazed, and the grand hall became a storm of fire and steel. Adrian fought with precision, his every move protecting the princess at his back. When one soldier broke through, Adrian's strike dropped him before he could reach her, but soon the rebels pressed harder, and Adrian realized he could not protect both the queen and the princess alone. Stay behind the throne, he ordered Lyra firmly. She wanted to protest, but the look in his eyes silenced her. She obeyed, retreating into the shadows of the days. Then Adrian turned and moved toward the queen herself. Serenia stood at the center of the hall, her staff glowing with power as she struck down those who dared approach. But even she was beginning to tire. The rebels were many, and their rage was fierce. Adrian cut his way to her side. His blade struck in rhythm with her staff, human steel and Zarathi crystal moving as one. For a moment, the queen glanced at him, surprise flickering in her golden eyes. She had fought beside generals before, but never had she felt such seamless strength beside her. Together, they pushed the rebels back, the princess in peril, but betrayal ran deeper than they thought. While Adrian and the queen battled at the front, Another group of traitors slipped toward the rear, where Princess Lyra hid. One soldier raised his blade to strike her down. "Adrian," she cried. The human turned instantly, his heart jolting. He sprinted across the hall, leaping over fallen soldiers, his blade flashing as he intercepted the rebel at the last second. The clash rang out loud and sharp, and Adrian's strength forced the soldier back. With one final strike, Adrian disarmed him and stood protectively before the princess once more. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low but fierce. Lyra nodded. Though fear still shone in her eyes, the queen's command the hall was nearly consumed in battle now. Smoke rose from shattered crystal lamps, and the air rang with the clash of steel. At last the queen raised her staff high. Energy blazed from it, a wave of golden light sweeping across the chamber. Many rebels were thrown back, crashing to the ground. Silence followed, broken only by the moans of the wounded. The queen's voice echoed through the hall. "You dare strike at your queen, and yet you are still alive, because mercy is mine to give. Leave now, or face justice." Some rebels dropped their weapons, fear in their eyes. Others fled into the shadows. But a handful remained, their loyalty to the coup unbroken, and among them was the leading general. His eyes burned with hatred as he pointed at Adrian. "You," he spat, "you are the poison. Without you, she would still be ours to command. Tonight, the alien dies?" He charged forward, his massive blade raised high. The dual Adrian stepped forward to meet him. Their blades clashed with a force that shook the hall. The general was strong as strikes, heavy and relentless. But Adrian was faster, more precise. He had fought in wars across worlds, and he knew that strength without discipline was weakness. The duel raged, sparks flying as steel met steel. The general roared with every strike, but Adrian's calm never broke. He blocked, countered, struck, and stepped aside. Finally, with one sharp twist, Adrian disarmed him. The general's blade clattered across the floor. Adrian held his sword steady, its edge at the man's throat. The hall fell silent, all eyes fixed on the human. Adrian spoke, his voice low but clear. "This ends now." The general's rage faltered into fear. He fell back, clutching his arm, and then fled with the last of the rebels. Aftermath, the hall was quiet once more. The queen lowered her staff, breathing heavily. Her golden eyes swept the room, taking in the wounded, the fallen, and finally, Adrian. He stood tall, his blade still at his side. His eyes calm, though his body bore fresh wounds. The queen stepped closer, her voice softer now. "You saved us all." Adrian shook his head. "I only did my duty." But Serenia's gaze lingered on him, something unspoken flickering in her eyes. Behind them, Princess Lyra stepped forward, her voice filled with relief. "He saved you, Mother. He saved us both." The queen looked at her daughter, then back at Adrian. And in that moment, she knew the truth that the court had already begun to whisper. This man was no longer just a guard. He was the shield of the throne. And perhaps, more than that. The palace of Zareth Prime was silent after the battle. The golden banners still hung, but they no longer felt like symbols of glory. The grand hall was scarred by fire and blade, its crystal pillars cracked, its floor stained by the clash of betrayal. The coup had failed, but its echo still haunted the empire. The queen had survived. The princess was safe. But the loyalty of the court had been broken, and at the center of it all stood Adrian Holt, the human soldier who had once been only a guard, but was now whispered about as the shield of the throne. The aftermath in the days that followed. The palace was filled with trials. Those who had turned against the queen were dragged before her, chains heavy around their wrists. "You raised your hands against your queen?" Serenia said coldly, as one of the captured generals was forced to kneel. "You will answer for it." Some begged for mercy. Others spat defiance. But none could deny the truth without Adrian. The queen and princess would have fallen that night. Whispers grew among the nobles. Some said the queen's survival was proof of her strength. Others said it was Adrian's victory, not hers. A few even claimed that perhaps fate itself had sent the human to change the course of the empire, and through it all, Adrian said little. He stayed at his post beside Princess Lyra, his expression calm, his eyes always scanning for danger. The court's debate soon, the queen called a council of her most loyal nobles. They gathered in the high chamber. The stars shining through the glass dome above, Adrian stood to the side, silent, but he felt every gaze upon him. One noble spoke first. Your Majesty, the rebellion proves one thing: the empire is divided. Some fear your trust in this human. Others envy it. Another added, if you wish to unite the empire again, you must show where your loyalty lies. You must choose between him and your people. The queen's golden eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting I abandon the one who saved my throne? A heavy silence followed. None dared answer. Adrian finally spoke, his voice steady. If my presence threatens your rule, then let me leave. I was sent here as an ally, not as a conqueror. Your empire comes first. But the queen's voice cut like steel. No, if you leave, the rebels will claim victory. If you stay, they must accept the truth that the throne cannot be shaken, no matter who stands beside it. Her words silenced the council, but they also deepened the whispers in the shadows. The princess's plea later that night. Princess Lyra came to Adrian in the gardens. The crystal flowers glowed faintly around them, their soft light reflecting in her eyes. You cannot leave, she said firmly. If you go, the palace will fall apart. My mother trusts you, even if others do not. Without you, she will stand alone. Adrian looked at her with calm eyes. And with me, she risks more rebellion. Every step I take here makes enemies among her people. Lyra shook her head. Then let them be angry. You are not only a guard now, Adrian. You are part of this story. You are part of us. Her words struck him more deeply than he expected. He had always thought of himself as an outsider, a soldier far from home. But in her voice, he heard something else: acceptance. The queen's confession, that same night. Queen Serenia summoned Adrian to her private chamber. She dismissed her guards and stood before the wide glass window, the stars shining like rivers of fire beyond. When she turned to face him, there was no crown upon her head, no staff in her hand, only a woman with golden eyes that burned with unspoken thoughts. You saved me, she said softly. You saved my daughter. And you stood beside me when even my own people turned against me. Adrian bowed his head. It was my duty. Her voice lowered. No, it was more than duty. Others follow orders, but you choose to stand. That is what I cannot ignore. For the first time, the queen let her guard fall. Her strength was still there, but beneath it, Adrian saw something else: loneliness. The weight of a crown carried for too long. You are not of my people, she continued. And yet, I trust you more than I trust those who have sworn their lives to me. Adrian met her gaze. Trust is not about blood. It is about truth. And my truth is simple: I will not let harm touch you. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then the queen spoke words she had never spoken to anyone. Adrian Holt, I do not only want you as my shield, I want you beside me forever. The human's dilemma, the queen's confession, struck Adrian like a storm. He had never expected such words, not from the ruler of an empire, not from a queen whose strength had been her armor. Part of him wanted to accept. His heart, though long disciplined, stirred with something he had not felt in years. But another part of him hesitated. He was human. She was Scifi. Their worlds were far apart, their duties even further. And yet, here, in this palace of crystal and fire, they had found something that neither distance nor blood could erase. He bowed his head. Your Majesty, if I stand beside you, it will bring more rebellion. Your people may never accept me. The queen stepped closer, her golden eyes fierce. Then let them rebel. Let them whisper. An empire is not ruled by fear of gossip, it's ruled by strength. And my strength is choosing what I will not lose. Her words silenced his doubts, though the storm in his heart remained. The final trial news of the queen's closeness to the humans spread quickly. Nobles who had remained silent now showed their anger openly. Generals questioned her judgment. Some even threatened to abandon their loyalty. At last, a group of nobles demanded a final test. If this human is to stand beside our queen, one declared, let him prove his worth. Let him face the trial of the throne, the ancient test of Zarathi loyalty. It was a challenge few survived. Adrian accepted without hesitation. If this is what it takes, then I will face it. The queen tried to stop him, but his eyes were steady. Your throne deserves unity. If this trial gives it, I will not refuse. And so, the trial was set. The trial of fire and stone. The trial was held in the great arena, carved deep into the heart of the mountain. Thousands gathered to watch, their voices echoing in the vast chamber. Adrian stood at the center, clad in light armor, his sword at his side. Across from him, 3 challenges awaited: strength, courage, and truth, the ancient measures of a Zarathi leader. The first was a beast of fire, a creature born of the Empire's old traditions. Adrian fought it with precision, not with brute force, striking where it was weakest until it fell. The second was a gauntlet of fear illusions drawn from his mind, forcing him to face his past battles, his losses, his regrets. He walked through them with steady steps, refusing to be broken by ghosts. The third was the test of truth. A crystal was placed before him, glowing with ancient power. It revealed the heart of whoever touched it. Many had fallen here, exposed by lies. Adrian placed his hand upon it. The crystal glowed bright not with lies, not with greed, but with simple, unyielding truth. I will protect. The arena fell silent. And then, slowly, voices rose not in anger, but in awe. The queen's victory when Adrian emerged from the trial. Bloodied but unbroken, the queen stood waiting. The nobles bowed, some in shame, others in reluctant respect. Serenia looked at him, her golden eyes fierce with pride. You have given them proof. But more than that, you have given me certainty. Before the gathered court, she declared, this man is no longer an outsider. He is part of the throne. He is part of me. No. The words echoed through the arena, leaving no room for doubt. Adrian bowed his head, but his heart was no longer calm. It burned with something he could no longer deny. He had come here as a guard. He had stood as a shield. But now, he was something more. The queen had chosen him. And he, though silent, had chosen her too. Epilogue of Part 5 that night. As the palace rested under the twin moons, Adrian stood at the balcony of his chamber. The stars stretched wide above him, far beyond Earth, far beyond everything he had once known. And yet, for the first time, he did not feel like a stranger. Behind him, a voice spoke softly. You stood for me, even when all others doubted. Now I will stand for you. He turned. And there she was, the Queen of Zarath, not just his ruler, but something far more powerful. Together, they looked out at the stars. And Adrian knew the truth. His story was no longer only his. It was theirs.